on the bottom was the rutabagas. So he gave you a few rutabagas. That was the vegetable. And if he didn't know you, he just gives you the water. It's not what you know, it's whom you know. It's today the same thing, right? If you know the teacher, he'll give you a good A. No? Not you. Really?
No.
It doesn't work that way? Well, it probably will work for me too. So that was going on. But meanwhile, people starting to escape from the camp. They asked me to go with them. I said, where am I going to go? At that time, in 1940, I was 12 years old. I have no idea where I was and where I'm going to go. I said no. And if you got caught, then the next day, in the morning before you went to work, everybody has to go out to the barbed wire, and they were marching on the other side of the barbed wire. They told the escapee to kneel down, and they shot him in the head and they left him dead. And they didn't take him away. You can see the birds poking at the flesh. That went on for quite a while, doing the same thing. Was no showers, was no bathrooms, so you can imagine. There was no clothes to change. With the clothes you came, that's the clothes you were. And I wore those pants and my shirt maybe for about a year and a half before they gave us the striped uniform. My pants could have walked away by themselves. That's how stiff they were. So at that time, there was, if you remember the history, the German invaded the Soviet Union. They almost went to Moscow, and they almost went to Stalingrad, and then the freezing weather came, and the Soviet Union pushed them back, and they came west. They're going west. And so there was a rumor going on one of those days, we're going to go from that camp. That was Radom, the first camp. And the rumor, and meanwhile, in the camp, they asked who is a shoemaker, who is a tailor, who is a watchmaker, or a goldsmith, whatever you want, to report to the commandant. So my uncle, my aunt's husband, was a tailor, and he picked his hand up. He said, "Ich bin a Schneider." He said, "How do you know how to make uniforms?" He said, "I worked for the Polish Army. I made them uniforms." He said, "Could you make it for us?" And he said, "Sure." So he was making. They took him over to their headquarters. He was making uniforms for them. And meanwhile, they gave him bread, they gave him sausages, so he had it good. But his wife was with the female camp on the other side with the fence. So he had privileges to go visit her anytime he wants. But when he brought some bread, he gave me some bread, so he helped me out, and he helped me out a little bit. That was going on from 1940 almost to 1942. And meanwhile, my aunt got pregnant. And yeah, it was going on a lot of pregnancies, believe me. You know, nobody wants to talk about it. There was a lot of loving there. And even if you're hungry, you're still, you know, especially if there's no food, if you steal some bread and you want somebody as a maid, you give them a piece of bread and you have it. Okay. Now how much it costs? $20? No, I'm just kidding you. You know, but that's how it was. But the thing is, in that particular thing, the Germans did not have sex with the Jewish females. Therefore, in my camp, they were forbidden. The only time the Ukrainians, the Slovaks who joined the SS, they were very, very vicious. They are the only ones for a loaf of bread that could have any Jewish girls. And a lot of pregnancies were there. So my aunt got pregnant, and there was a rumor going on that the Soviet Union is pushing towards the West. Now, we didn't know when. Was a rumor going on that we're going to have to move from that camp. When, we had no idea. Meanwhile, people were escaping. At least once or twice a week, there were 1 person caught, 10 person caught escaping from that camp. Well, it must have been about 12,000 people or better in that camp. Meanwhile, before my aunt gave birth, there was 2 SS women standing, and the minute the baby was born, they took the baby and threw it at the wall, and you know what happened. You know, in the minute my uncle told me because he was there. My aunt survived the war, but they used to live in Waterloo, Iowa, and she never wanted to talk about it. She was never wanted to interview Spielberg, and about 8-9 years ago, her daughter moved to Florida from Waterloo, and we were talking about it, and she said, "Tell me what happened to my mother." So I told her, and she didn't believe it. So she went out to her mother, and her mother didn't tell her thing, because she didn't want to remember anything about it. So, meanwhile, the time came, and everybody had to line up. Must be about 11,000 to 12,000 people. We were marching.